The small, picturesque town of Cedarbrook was known for its quiet streets and the prestigious university nestled in the heart of it. For years, the university had produced some of the brightest minds in the country, drawing students from around the world. It was a place where success and ambition thrived, where students sought not only academic excellence but also the perfect college experience. Among them were Mark, Emily, and Tom, three students who seemed to have it all. Popular, intelligent, and well-liked by both their peers and professors, they were the poster children for success. But behind the scenes, beneath the polished exteriors, a darker side was beginning to take root. It started with idle curiosity, a fleeting exploration into the world of online subcultures that lurked beneath the surface of the internet. Mark had stumbled upon at first an underground forum dedicated to shock value. It was a space where individuals traded the most extreme and disturbing content, pushing the limits of what was considered acceptable by society. At first it was just a curiosity, something to laugh at, a way to bond over the bizarre and unusual. But the more they explored, the more they became fascinated. It wasn't enough to simply look at the content. They began to consider creating their own videos that would shock, disturb, and ultimately sell. They weren't interested in the typical viral trends. No, they wanted to be remembered for something more extreme, something that would forever etch their names into the fabric of the internet. They quickly realized that in this dark corner of the web, violence, especially towards animals, was a commodity. The more graphic the footage, the higher the price. What started as idle chat between friends soon turned into something far more sinister. Emily, the most tech-savvy of the trio, quickly learned the ins and outs of editing and producing high-quality videos. Her skills became invaluable as they began to conceptualize their first video, a cat in a blender. The idea seemed simple at first, an animal in a precarious, dangerous position that would elicit shock from viewers. But the more they thought about it, the more they realized how much money they could make from something so horrific. The gruesome idea quickly evolved into something more elaborate. They weren't just going to make a video. They were going to create something that would be remembered, something that would make them famous in a way that few could ever dream of. The first hurdle was getting the cat. Mark had a friend who worked at a local animal shelter, and after a few convincing conversations, he managed to gain access to some of the animals there. They assured the staff that they were conducting a research experiment on animal behavior, claiming it was for academic purposes. No one questioned them. They were respected students from a prestigious university, after all. The moment they brought the cat to their secret filming location, things took a dark turn. The animal, terrified and disoriented, was drugged to make it easier to control. They were careful, calculated, and meticulous as they set up the camera. It wasn't just about making a video anymore. It was about making a product. Mark, Emily, and Tom worked together to ensure every detail was perfect: the lighting, the angles, the sound. It wasn't enough for the cat to be in danger. They needed to make sure it appeared real, extreme, and shocking. Every moment was carefully crafted, from the spinning blender to the final, chilling image. Once the video was finished, they uploaded it to the secret online forum. The response was immediate. There was no turning back now. The video Cat in Blender quickly gained traction, and their audience buyers began to emerge. The more they sold, the more addicted they became to the rush of power, to the excitement of knowing that people were paying for the suffering of an innocent animal. It was like a drug, and with each transaction their hunger for something darker, more shocking, grew. In the beginning, they justified their actions to themselves. It was all for the money. It was all for fame. But deep down they knew they were crossing a line, and yet they couldn't stop. The excitement, the attention, the money, it was too intoxicating. They were no longer just students, they were producers of shock content, the architects of their own twisted fame, and they were just getting started. The group's venture into the dark world of extreme content creation quickly spiraled into something far more sinister than any of them had initially anticipated. After the shocking success of their first video, Cat in Blender, Mark, Emily, and Tom realized they had stumbled upon a lucrative niche in the shadowy depths of the internet. The anonymous buyers on the underground forums clamored for more, their messages filled with requests for increasingly disturbing scenarios. The trio found themselves at a crossroads, but the allure of easy money and twisted infamy made their decision clear. They would take things further. Mark, always the boldest of the group, became the unofficial leader, pushing the boundaries with new ideas and daring suggestions. Emily, with her technical expertise, perfected the process, ensuring the videos were seamless and horrifying enough to captivate their growing audience. Tom, initially hesitant, found himself swept up in the momentum, his reluctance overshadowed by the thrill of being part of something so taboo and forbidden. Their next project was born out of the escalating demands of their audience. Cat and Microwave was conceived as a follow-up to their first video, a logical step in their twisted evolution. The concept was simple yet horrifying, placing an unsuspecting animal in a situation of unimaginable cruelty, capturing every second on camera for their paying customers. This time they wanted to create something even more visceral, something that would cement their reputation in the underground community. Obtaining the cat was once again surprisingly easy. Using the same fabricated story about conducting behavioral research, they managed to gain access to another shelter. The staff, trusting and unaware, handed over the animal without question. The group knew that time was of the essence. The more frequently they could produce content, the more money they could make before anyone caught wind of their activities. The preparations for the second video were meticulous. Emily had upgraded her equipment, investing in better cameras and editing software to ensure their product was of the highest quality. The group scouted a new location, a secluded basement in an abandoned building near the university, where they could work without fear of being discovered. They even practiced their roles to ensure the shoot would go smoothly. It was a well-oiled operation, their skills honed from the mistakes of their first video. When the day came to film, the atmosphere was tense. The cat, frightened and mewing softly, was placed inside the microwave. The group worked in silence, their actions cold and mechanical. The only sound was the hum of the camera and the occasional whispered instruction. They filmed every moment, from the closing of the microwave door to the agonizing conclusion. The final footage was brutal, raw, and utterly devoid of humanity, exactly what their audience wanted. The video was an instant hit. Buyers paid exorbitant amounts for exclusive access, and the group reveled in their newfound success. But with this success came a growing sense of paranoia. They knew what they were doing was not only immoral but illegal, and the stakes were higher than ever. Emily began to notice changes in her behavior. She was more withdrawn, more anxious. She started having nightmares about the animals, their cries echoing in her mind long after the cameras stopped rolling. Tom, too, seemed to be struggling, though he refused to admit it. Mark, on the other hand, remained steadfast, his focus entirely on the money and the fame. As the trio continued their work, they failed to notice the cracks forming in their carefully constructed facade. Rumors began circulating on campus, whispers of strange behavior and unusual activity among the three friends. A few students even speculated about their involvement in the viral videos that had shocked the internet, though no one dared confront them directly. The group dismissed these rumors as baseless gossip, but the seeds of suspicion had been planted. What they didn't realize was that their actions were drawing the attention of more than just their audience. Law enforcement agencies had begun monitoring the forums where their videos were being sold, and the investigation was closing in. The trio was oblivious, too consumed by their dark enterprise to see the storm brewing on the horizon. They were riding high on the success of their latest video, unaware that their actions were about to catch up with them in ways they couldn't imagine. Detective Miller had spent years working in law enforcement, but nothing in his career had prepared him for the grotesque nature of the case now unfolding before him. The videos circulating online, featuring unspeakable acts of cruelty, had sparked outrage across the country. Animal rights activists, concerned citizens, and even tech companies were demanding action. The source of the videos had to be found, and the perpetrators brought to justice. Miller, along with his partner Detective Harlow, was assigned to the case, tasked with piecing together a puzzle that spanned the dark corners of the internet. The investigation began with the videos themselves. They were meticulously analyzed for any clues, background noises, objects in the frame, even the type of equipment used. The perpetrators had taken precautions to avoid being identified, but small details began to emerge. A faint hum in the background hinted at the presence of industrial equipment, suggesting the videos might have been filmed near a university or research facility. The detectives also noted that the lighting and camera quality were unusually high, indicating the use of professional-grade equipment. Miller turned his attention to the forums where the videos were being sold. These shadowy corners of the internet operated with an intricate system of anonymity, using encrypted communication and cryptocurrency transactions to shield the identities of buyers and sellers. But even the most secure systems had weaknesses. The team managed to trace some of the payments to a digital wallet linked to an account that, while anonymous, showed patterns of use tied to a specific location, Cedarbrook University. Armed with this lead, Miller and Harlow began their work on campus. They conducted discreet interviews with staff and students, looking for anything unusual. Rumors about strange behavior among 3 students, Mark, Emily, and Tom, began to surface. Their classmates described them as intelligent but secretive, often disappearing for hours at a time and showing little interest in socializing outside their small circle. Some mentioned their interest in filmmaking and online content creation, though no one suspected the true extent of their activities. Meanwhile, the detectives continued to analyze the digital trail. A breakthrough came when they identified a campus computer that had been used to upload one of the videos. Surveillance footage revealed Mark entering the computer lab late at night around the time of the upload. His actions were deliberate, his demeanor calm. It was enough to warrant further investigation. As the detectives delved deeper, they uncovered more evidence linking the trio to the crimes. A search of their social media accounts revealed subtle clues, photos with equipment matching the type used in the videos, mentions of late-night projects, and even cryptic references to their growing infamy. Each discovery brought them closer to the truth, but Miller knew they needed something concrete to make an arrest. The break came when an anonymous tipster contacted the department, claiming to have overheard a conversation between the students. The tip included details about an abandoned building near the university, where the group supposedly carried out their activities. Surveillance was immediately set up, and it didn't take long for the trio to fall into the trap. One evening, Mark, Emily, and Tom were seen entering the building, carrying a large covered box. Miller and Harlow, along with a team of officers, moved in cautiously. What they found inside was beyond anything they had anticipated. The basement was set up like a makeshift film studio, complete with cameras, lights, and computers. Cages lined the walls, some empty, others containing frightened animals. The group was in the middle of preparing for their next video when the officers stormed in, catching them red-handed. The trio offered no resistance, their faces blank as they were handcuffed and led away. The evidence was overwhelming: footage on their computers, receipts for equipment purchases, and even a ledger detailing their transactions with buyers. As they were escorted out of the building, the weight of their actions seemed to settle on them, though none of them spoke a word. Back at the station, Miller couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and disgust. The perpetrators had been caught, but the horror of their actions lingered. The case wasn't just about animal cruelty. It was a window into the darker aspects of human nature, a reminder of the lengths some would go for money and recognition. And as the investigation continued, Miller knew there was still more to uncover, both about the trio and the shadowy network that had enabled their crimes. As the investigation progressed, the fallout from the arrest of Mark, Emily, and Tom began to ripple through Cedarbrook University and beyond. The trio's arrest sent shockwaves through the campus community, leaving professors, classmates, and administrators grappling with the grim reality of what had taken place right under their noses. The media descended upon the quiet town, eager to report on the disturbing details of the case. Headlines screamed of the students' involvement in creating and selling grotesque animal cruelty videos, turning their once promising futures into a public spectacle of infamy. Detective Miller and his team worked tirelessly to piece together the full extent of the students' operation. A forensic analysis of the computers and hard drives seized from the abandoned building revealed a treasure trove of evidence. There were detailed plans for videos, transaction records showing the flow of cryptocurrency from anonymous buyers, and even chat logs from the underground forums where they marketed their twisted content. It became clear that the trio had not only been active participants in this grim trade, but had also gained a reputation as some of its most prolific creators. As the evidence mounted, the psychological profiles of the three students began to emerge. Mark was revealed to be the ringleader, a calculated and charismatic figure who had the ability to manipulate those around him. He was the one who had first discovered the underground forums and had convinced Emily and Tom to join him. Emily, the technical mastermind, had always been known for her intelligence and creativity. Her role in editing and producing the videos showcased her disturbing ability to compartmentalize her actions. Tom, the most reluctant of the group, was initially swept up in the thrill of the operation but later became increasingly withdrawn, haunted by the consequences of their actions. The deeper the investigation went, the more disturbing details came to light. The group's obsession with their work had grown over time, consuming their lives entirely. They had meticulously planned each video, scouting locations, obtaining animals under false pretenses, and ensuring the production quality was high enough to command top prices. Their conversations revealed a chilling lack of empathy, with discussions about ways to make the content more shocking purely to maximize their earnings. Public outrage grew as more details of the case emerged. Animal rights groups staged protests outside the university, demanding stricter laws and harsher penalties for animal cruelty. Cedar Brook residents, once proud of their community's academic reputation, now faced the stigma of being associated with such a heinous crime. The university administration was forced to address its own failures, implementing new policies to prevent similar incidents in the future. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Mark, Emily, and Tom showed little remorse during the early stages of their trial. Their demeanor in court only fueled public anger, with many accusing them of being completely devoid of humanity. However, as the trial progressed, cracks began to appear in their united front. Emily, in particular, seemed to be struggling under the weight of the proceedings. She broke down during one hearing, revealing that she had been plagued by nightmares and feelings of guilt, but had been too afraid of Mark to stop. The trial became a media circus, with every detail of their operation laid bare for the world to see. Testimonies from classmates, professors, and even shelter workers painted a chilling picture of how the trio had hidden their actions behind the veneer of normalcy. Expert witnesses discussed the psychological impact of their crimes, not only on the animals they tortured but also on the broader community that had to grapple with the trauma of their actions. For Detective Miller, the case was both a victory and a grim reminder of the darkness that could lurk in even the most promising individuals. The arrests had dismantled one operation, but the investigation into the buyers and the broader network continued. Miller knew the trio's crimes were part of a larger, more pervasive issue, one that would take years to address fully. As the trial drew closer to its conclusion, public focus began to shift from the students themselves to the systemic failures that had allowed their crimes to go unnoticed for so long. The case sparked debates about internet regulation, the ethics of animal welfare, and the psychological factors that drove seemingly ordinary people to commit extraordinary acts of cruelty. While the students awaited their sentences, their story became a cautionary tale, a dark chapter in Cedar Rock's history that would never be forgotten. The sentencing of Mark, Emily, and Tom marked the culmination of a case that had gripped the nation. In the packed courtroom, a hush fell over the spectators as the judge delivered his verdict. Each of the three students faced multiple charges, including animal cruelty, conspiracy to distribute illegal content, and financial crimes related to their online activities. The sentences were harsh, reflecting not only the severity of their actions but also the public outcry demanding justice. Mark received the longest sentence as the mastermind, while Emily and Tom, though still given significant prison terms, were treated with slightly more leniency due to their perceived roles as followers. As the gavel fell, the students showed varied reactions. Mark maintained his stoic composure, his gaze fixed forward as if unaffected by the years ahead of him. Emily broke down in tears, her guilt and regret finally spilling over in a way that no courtroom drama could contain. Tom appeared dazed, as though still processing how his life had unraveled so completely. For the families of the students, the sentences were a devastating blow, but for the public, they were a step toward closure. The aftermath of the case rippled far beyond the courtroom. Cedarbrook University launched an internal investigation into how the trio had managed to operate undetected for so long. Policies were revamped, including stricter monitoring of student activities and closer collaboration with local authorities. Professors and advisors were trained to recognize warning signs of troubling behavior, though many acknowledged that the trio had been adept at hiding their true selves. The university also pledged to support animal welfare initiatives, seeking to restore its tarnished reputation. The media continued to dissect the story, turning it into a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the dark corners of the internet. Documentaries, podcasts, and news segments explored every angle of the case, from the psychological profiles of the perpetrators to the ethical questions surrounding the role of online platforms in enabling such crimes. For a time, the names of Mark, Emily, and Tom became synonymous with the grotesque, a haunting reminder of how far people could fall. Detective Miller and his team, though satisfied with the convictions, found little solace in the outcome. The investigation into the buyers who had supported the trio's operation revealed a web of anonymity that was nearly impossible to penetrate. While a few arrests were made, the vast majority of those who had funded and consumed the content remained faceless, hidden behind layers of encryption. Miller knew the case was far from over, and the fight against such crimes would be an ongoing battle. Emily's breakdown during the trial led her to cooperate with authorities after her sentencing. She provided detailed accounts of their operations, shedding light on how they had circumvented detection for so long. Her cooperation helped investigators identify other underground creators, leading to further arrests and the dismantling of several smaller networks. Though it didn't absolve her of guilt, it was a step toward redemption in the eyes of some. Tom, however, retreated into silence. In prison, he became a shadow of his former self, consumed by the weight of his actions. Mark, on the other hand, thrived in the twisted notoriety the case had brought him. He boasted to fellow inmates about his legacy, unrepentant and unyielding in his belief that he had achieved something extraordinary, albeit grotesque. His lack of remorse became a subject of fascination for psychologists, who saw in him a chilling embodiment of moral disengagement. Outside the prison walls, the case inspired a wave of activism. Animal rights groups used the tragedy as a rallying point, pushing for tougher animal cruelty laws and greater regulation of online platforms. The case also led to increased awareness of the psychological impact of exposure to violent content, sparking conversations about mental health and ethics in the digital age. For Cedarbrook, the scars of the case lingered long after the media coverage faded. The town struggled to reconcile its reputation as a hub of academic excellence with the horrors that had unfolded within its borders. Memorials for the animals lost in the videos became places of reflection, where residents and students alike gathered to confront the darker side of human nature. As time passed, the story of Mark, Emily, and Tom faded from the headlines, but its lessons endured. It became a grim reminder of how the pursuit of fame and fortune, when untethered from morality, could lead to devastating consequences. The trio's actions had left a permanent mark, not only on the lives of the animals they harmed, but on the collective conscience of a society grappling with the ethical dilemmas of a digital world.